I don't think that any industry doesn't survive without trust.
Hmm.
Nobody buys from you if they don't trust you.
Mm,
Right. So trust and establishing trust is critical. And if our training courses are don't engender trust, like people say, I don't think it's a good course. It doesn't matter how cheap I am, they're not buying.
right.
So I don't think that there's anything that doesn't have trust. In fact, if you're a direct salesperson, what's the first thing you do? You build trust.
Yeah.
If you don't have trust, what's the difference? Nobody's buying from you. You don't buy from people you don't trust.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Stephen Sheiner, who is CRO at Defensify. Stephen, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
I am excited to have this conversation because it's a little bit different than most that I've been having so far. If you could, Stephen, tell everyone a little bit more about Defensify, who you guys are all about, who you help, and a little bit more about your role within the company.
Sure. So we're an online learning um, business that Defensify is that basically trains security guards. So the United States has about 1.3 million security guards. 70% of the security guards work for contract security companies. The other 30% work for companies directly as employees in a security department. What we do is we provide a significant number of courses to train unarmed security guards, also courses to get licensed. So in every state in the United States, there are requirements for licensing for security guards. Some states are pretty loose. Basically, if you don't have a criminal record and you can figure out how to give them your fingerprints, they'll give you a license. But the majority of states require some form of training.
Hmm.
12 states allow for online training.
Hmm.
So we concentrate somewhat on the 12 states with online training, though security companies that want to train their guards better, even in states that don't allow for online training for the purpose of getting a secure guard card, still use this because better trained guards provide a better, better trained guards do their job better. It's as simple as that. And also, the industry has a problem with retention, and training actually helps retention.
Yeah, it's so interesting. The first thing that you bring up is like the dynamic of the states. Maybe some allow online and some don't. And as someone who is not particularly familiar with the security training industry, the first thought that comes to mind is, hey, I would assume a security guard would need to do in person training, be very involved, be immersed in the conditions. Um, but it sounds like some of that is not fully true. So how do you view that dynamic of being able to supplement the training through the online, even if it's a state where it they don't allow that online aspect of it to be the only factor in their training?
So there's two sides to that, right? There's one side which is the classroom training.
Hmm.
The other side is the in-field training. Actually, none of the states require in-field training. They all either allow for online training or classroom training.
Hmm.
So the training that we're providing replaces somebody sitting in a classroom.
Hmm.
And our training allows for someone to do it at a self pace, though some states require a certain number of hours, regardless of whether it takes that long or not. You have to fulfill the hours. Um, but that doesn't abrogate the need for a company to actually train some people in the field.
Hmm.
But to get a guard license, you don't actually need field training.
Hmm. Interesting.
So what we're trying to do is provide guard companies and corporations with their own security departments
Hmm.
the kind of training that people need on how to handle conflicts, how to deal with sexual harassment, how to deal with filling out the right kind of reports, reporting things like that. What the law says they can and cannot do. Just because you put on a uniform doesn't make you a cop.
Sure.
How to deal with difficult people. I
Hmm.
mean, one of the things about being a security guard is most people, probably an exaggeration, a lot of people think of security guards as somebody they can abuse,
Hmm.
and they'll yell at them, treat them poorly. And security guards are supposed to keep their cool. They're not allowed to get upset. They're human. They do. So there's training for that. So it's a lot more to it than just getting the guard card.
Hmm.
But some states have started to allow for online training where it's instructor led and they're over Zoom.
Hmm.
But the majority of states still require in classroom with a
Hmm.
instructor, which makes no sense at all, really.
Interesting. And what do you think is the most um maybe the hardest part of being able to transfer the right skills to the security guards that are getting trained, is there a certain aspect of the job that always maybe gets highlighted as the, hey, this is the most important thing, really focus on this?
No, it's really a lot of different aspects to it, right? I mean, there's two sides to the equation. There's one side which is what the corporation needs, and then
Hmm.
there's the other side which what the customer needs in terms of their providing security.
Yeah.
So every company has their own rules and way of operating, giving jobs to, providing jobs and instructions on the job. How do you fill out the forms? All that other stuff. That's one part of it. That's the part that the company has to impart to an employee so they know what they're doing. And then there's the basic human skills that a guard should have, right?
Hmm.
Getting into a situation where it can be highly volatile, a guard can either make that situation worse or better depending on how they handle themselves. But without training, they tend to handle themselves poorly. So the problem that most guards have, or the guards have in general, is that until they're confronted with a situation, they don't know how to handle it.
Hmm.
So our courses are all designed to provide them with, in effect, muscle memory. So they can say, oh, I know if that's the situation, I learned what to do in that situation. And our courses are all interactive and require that the person self-paced. So the person is actually getting a lesson as they go along. But so there's two sides to that equation, right?
Huh, that makes sense. And is there a specific like mistake or a common error that as the security guards, be it inside of a corporation, be it individually, that they usually make or that they often make that doesn't allow them to maybe become the best security guard they could be?
Well, first of all, there's always a significant risk of liability, right?
Mhm.
Do the wrong thing and create a problem that somebody's getting sued. This is America, right? So knowing what they can do legally and can't do legally is one of the issues. And if they're not properly trained, they'll overstep their boundaries.
Hmm.
Um, the other side of it is that it's a temperament issue. But one of the problems in the security industry is it's a poorly paid job.
Hmm.
It's a minimum wage job. It generally goes to people that are either not college, generally not college educated, usually high school. Then the only criteria is that they're willing to work for minimum wage or close to it. So it's a poorly paid job. And so what you get a situation in which a lot of companies have high turnover, 150 to 200% a year.
Hmm.
And that's why being able to train online is so valuable because having to keep organizing training classes with enough people to justify an instructor is really difficult.
Hmm.
So they
Interesting.
can't do one on one, right? So it has a lot of benefits that way. But again, a lot depends on where they are. I mean, if you could
Yeah.
think about it, a security guard working in a shopping mall with a lot of kids better know how to deal with teenagers
Hmm. Yeah.
because he's going to have them, right? Somebody working in a hospital better understand how to de-escalate situations when parents are all stressed out because their kid was hurt and the guard is keeping them away. Those kinds of things. So
Hmm.
it's really a stress can be a very stressful job, and it tends to be given to people with relatively low pay scale.
Hmm, and it's interesting. I want to touch on something that you actually just brought up, which is the high turnover. Which in our conversation before we actually scheduled this, my observation was, it can actually be a good thing, at least for your business, to be able to grow, and obviously be able to have a lot of people going through the program. So I would love to learn a little bit more about, as you guys are working with these corporations, getting a lot more training going on. What are some of the things that are obstacles in finding a lot more of these companies to work with to create a lot more opportunity for the business to grow?
So we have an easily defined one, 70% of the universe of potential customers are security guard companies.
Hmm.
Well, that's easy, right? It's not hard to find all the security
Yeah.
guard companies in the United States, even though finding good lists is not necessarily that easy. But with the right amount of digging and calling, you get to the right person. The 30% of the industry that's made up of corporate America is a little more difficult because you don't know if a company, just because they have security guards, you don't know if they're employees or if they're contracted out.
Hmm.
So the first problem we have when we reach out to a corporation is to make that determination. Do they have a guard force that's contracted or employees? So we've been looking at all kinds of different ways to identify that, looking at job boards, anything that can identify. But that's the hard part,
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
being able to identify whether it's contract or not.
And how does that change the dynamic for you if they are contractors or if they're full-time employees?
Well, if they're contract and it's their guard company they're contracting with, that's the client. If it's in house, they're the client.
I see. So you might as well just pivot and like, hey, we don't have to talk to you. We just talk to the actual.
Talking to you is a waste of time because you're not a buyer, right? The buyer, the guard company. Now you may insist that the company that you're working with, that you've
Mhm,
hired to be your contract service provider,
mhm,
have well trained guards.
mhm,
As a customer, you might demand that they certain levels of education or training, etc.
mhm.
Uh, but I couldn't affect that. It's the guard company that's going to make the decision how that's delivered.
For sure, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for clarifying that. And for you guys to acquire a lot more business, is it usually these companies reaching out to you, finding you, or is it the other way around where you are trying to get like
We do advertising, we do marketing, right? We do pay per click, mostly to go after the individual consumer guard who wants to take a course. I should tell you that of the 13,000 guard companies in the United States, the vast majority of them do not pay for training for guards.
hmm,
They may have a little bit of training specifically once they've hired somebody, but for getting a guard card, most of them don't pay for training. The reason for that is because the turnover is so high, and the majority of them look at it and say, "Why should I train somebody who's going to quit in 2 months
hmm,
and go someplace else?" Ironically, I think if they train people, they probably find they stay longer, but that's another discussion, right?
hmm. Interesting. And
Uh,
how does that how would you answer that question if they ask that to you? Why should I keep paying for this thing if
Well, because actually, I explained to them that actually the issue they have is retention, and training improves retention.
Mhm.
So there's a truth of it's a universal truth. It has nothing to do with security guards, but it's the law of reciprocity. Are you familiar with that?
Of course.
Okay. So if I train you and I spent money working on you, do you not feel some obligation to me?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
There's time invested, effort invested. Yeah, learn.
You invested in me. I feel that right, exactly. You care. You invested in me. You spent the time to train me. Therefore, I'm not rushing to go work somewhere else for either the same money or 5 cents an hour.
Mhm. Uh-huh.
So the law of reciprocity works both ways. You do nothing for me. Why should I care if another guy offers me 50 cents more an hour? I'll go to that guy.
Yeah,
No reason
for
for
sure.
me to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
training actually increases and improves retention, and the cost of hiring guards is really expensive because you kiss a lot of frogs to find the prince, right? You have to
Yeah.
you go through a really tough time. I mean, I've had guard companies tell me it can cost them as much as $2,000 or $3,000 to hire one guard between advertising, the cost of bringing them in, interviewing, all that other stuff. To find one good guard that sticks for a year, $3,000.
That's
Cheaper to train them, put into
that's quite interesting.
with the costs that we are, which are really low.
Interesting. And for you guys then, what's the challenge when it comes to client acquisition in finding a lot more of these companies to work with, be it the security training company or security companies or the private corporations?
So it's the same challenge that anybody selling a business to business product has, right? It's finding the prospects that are in a position to buy and open to buy.
Hmm.
Same problem everybody has. So, we've tested and we're continually testing things like on LinkedIn ads. We're testing email programs. We're trying different things all the time to see what we can do. Security magazines, going to trade
Hmm.
shows, all the stuff that you do as a B2B marketer.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, the thing that works the most effective for us is our salespeople have lists of people they go after, and they aggressively go prospect
Hmm.
and work phones, work email, work LinkedIn, all the tools that a salesperson has, work
Hmm.
referrals, etc.
Interesting. And is there anything that you wish you knew, Steve, before you got into this entire thing with Defensify? That you're like, huh, this if I knew this, it would have made the progress and the progression so much easier.
No, not really. I mean, I think as most of your listeners will know, business to business marketing is business to business marketing.
Sure.
The tools that you have might be slightly different depending on the industry, but in general, it's all the same. Basic. These are the game plans you need to follow if you're going to be successful. So there's really nothing that I wish I knew before I got involved with Defensify. That
Nothing that would have prepared or made it different. It's like
no, I actually had some knowledge of the security industry prior to work getting involved because
hmm,
for a number of years I was working on a project to build security robots that would actually replace security guards for patrol.
Interesting.
And so I'd spend a lot of time understanding the industry and the
Hmm.
dynamics of
That's so interesting. I would love to learn more about that actually. Tell me more, a little bit more about that.
No, I mean, it was very simple. But what happened was is that I was working in the robotics industry with a number of clients, and
Mhm,
one of the clients had a robot that with some that was designed to do shelf level information technology. So in other words, it
mhm,
goes up and down a retail store or in a warehouse and reads the shelves using image technology, AI, and machine learning.
mm,
And it occurred to me that that same robot could just as easily patrol in a shopping mall at night with cameras and everything else. And instead of having 10 security guards, you could have a couple of robots and somebody sitting in a hub and send the robots instead of people for that kind of activity.
hmm,
So I started trying to put that together with a company. COVID kind of killed it. We got some momentum, but the company sort of didn't fulfill the technology requirement. Couldn't quite figure out how to make it work. But eventually, a certain amount of
mhm,
patrol will be replaced by robots. It's happening now.
mhm. Yeah,
I was a little too early.
is it do you think this is a trend that's, is this something that has caught your attention lately when it comes to the industry you're in, or it's just, like, kinda something that's along the way that'll likely happen, or
I think there are very few industries that won't be affected by some form of robotics.
Mhm,
I mean, it's already decimated warehouses in terms of employees in warehouses. You have a fraction of the people in a warehouse doing the work that you used to. Nobody picks and packs anymore if it's a big operation.
mhm,
All the products are moved around by robots, right? I mean, so robotics has affected the warehouse.
mhm,
Chinese are manufacturing cars without any people. It's all done in what they call dark factories, right? Electric cars where they're not quite as complex. There are very few industries that aren't going to be affected by robotics
mhm.
in some way,
Yeah,
some shape or form.
and do you think, stepping away from robotics, but still in that tech, I guess, idea with AI, how is that impacting Defensify and how you guys are able to one deliver the training to help more companies, but also find or acquire more companies to work with as well?
So, I mean, we're using AI to try and analyze a lot of different things, sales, sales
Sure.
presentation and lists that we're buying. We're using AI to better write copy and do a lot of things with AI.
Hmm.
Um, but in our industry, it's still mostly a people industry,
Mm,
right? And training is about training people. So, um, the AI part, these are tools that, I mean, everything you're doing now, AI is impacting it in some way, right?
yeah.
And search engines are using AI.
Mhm,
You're determining your lead generation programs involve using different AI products. So
mhm.
AI is having an impact, but they're tools. They don't change to any
Yeah.
great degree, at least not
Yeah.
now. Do I believe that AI will have a huge impact on some white collar jobs? Absolutely. I mean, if I was starting out today, I'd rather be a plumber than a lawyer.
Mm,
But those are situations that
yeah.
will change over time
Uh,
anyway.
yeah. And for the business, do you think trust is a key aspect of being able to make a sale for a prospect, or is it just more so like, hey, they're just looking for the fastest, quickest, cheapest training?
No, no. Well, I don't think that any industry doesn't survive without trust.
Hmm.
Nobody buys from you if they don't trust you.
Mm,
Right. So trust and establishing trust is critical. And if our training courses are don't engender trust, like people say, I don't think it's a good course. It doesn't matter how cheap I am, they're not buying. So I don't think that there's anything that doesn't have trust. In fact, if you're a direct salesperson, what's the first thing you do? You build trust.
yeah.
If you don't trust, what's the difference? Nobody's buying from you. You don't buy from people you don't trust. So
For sure, 100%. And I have a couple last questions here for you, Steven. For one is one that I've been asking everybody, which I'll start with. And the question is, if you had a magic wand and you could just wave this wand and solve one thing within the business, often there are many, but just one thing that would allow you to reach the growth goals, maybe the revenue, the client acquisition, whatever it might be, or maybe solve a challenge, but just one thing, what would you fix in the business, solve within the business?
um actually, from a sales point of view, the one thing we'd like to fix is a solution that tells us who the buyers are. We
Mm,
spend more time trying to find who the buyer is than we do actually selling the deal to the buyer, right?
mm,
So that would be the magic wand. We're in an interesting situation with this particular product in that it's hard to define who the purchaser is.
Hmm.
It could be the owner, it could be the training manager, it could be the chief operating officer.
Hmm.
There are all kinds of different people within an organization that we have to find to sell,
Hmm.
and it's not where it's the same everywhere. So if I had one magic wand, that would be it. Would be a solution that said, "This is the person that buys your product."
This is this
Or
person you want to speak with, huh?
yeah, exactly. That would be the magic wand I wish I had, but I don't.
Huh.
Which goes back to kissing frogs to find princes.
Yeah, which is why it's a magic wand and we're living in an imagination world.
Exactly.
And the final question here, Stephen, is a question that's not from me. It's a question from the past guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. Ready?
Sure.
Which actually you might have actually, funnily enough, you might have quickly answered a little bit of this in our conversation, but I'll ask it anyways, which is, how did you get involved with this business in the first place?
A referral.
Hmm.
So I've been, if you looked at my LinkedIn, you'll see that I really haven't held a job, but I work a lot with a lot of different companies, and there was somebody that I was helping, mentoring, and they knew the CEO of this company and made an introduction. So it was strictly by referral. Almost everything I do now is by referral. I don't really do anything to market myself.
Simple enough. Stephen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your insights. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you or maybe a little bit more about Defensify?
Find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
Awesome.
Just hit my profile, and I respond to virtually everybody. So if you send me a message, I'll respond.
Amazing. Stephen, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.